Hello world from Cape Town, South Africa. I've been toying with the notion for a long time now that you are the cloud, because there are so many options available to us to create our own dev ecosystem without all the expense and complexity of a public cloud provider. You can still use all the familiar tools that you like using. And I think it would foster stronger human relations and knowledge sharing and hopefully a good number of laughs. So today, I'd like to present that idea in 10 minutes. And whilst this idea has many layers, I hope you get the big picture. To get started, we will deploy some form of Kubernetes. In this instance, I used K3s, which was supposed to be straightforward, but my experience was one of a human brain trying to decipher engineer documentation with assumptions. I have thoughts that engineers should not write documentation. I have thoughts that there should be design and copyright people for this, but that's a perfect world. And of course, there's me, the human, a little slow at times. Here, I've depicted my setup with 3 control plane nodes, 3 agent worker nodes, and a PostgreSQL database server combined with Trafic, a cloud-native reverse proxy and load balancer. I have the Kubernetes database and my private container registry store all living on the PostgreSQL server, along with Ortelius, and watch this space because Emporus is coming, and I can't wait for that exploration with all the folks from Emporus. Once you have all that up and running, and I hope you haven't aged 400 years, you can deploy Portainer, a fantastic web UI, into the complex world of Kubernetes, allowing you to perform all manner of wonderful engineering magic with a mouse click and saving your cramped fingers from kubectl repetitive strain disorder. True story. Plus, it allows humans to gain familiarity with Kubernetes and learn how to tame the beast. In this image, you can see my nodes happily running with the combined resources I have at my disposal. Next, we gather our forces, meaning we build a community network together using zero tier. Zero tier acts as a private network using a private network range to connect us up all over the world securely using the public internet. It supports Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and only requires an agent in which you can decide when to be connected and when not to be. This allows us to have a decentralized dev environment using any spare hardware you have at your disposal. DNS can be automatically controlled with zero NSD, and we can use policy controls to do all manner of clever network routing. For example, exposing an endpoint publicly for demos, such as for Gerard from Ireland and his company's challenges. I know what you're thinking. Hell no, am I sharing my network with some crazy guy from Cape Town, South Africa in a leopard vest. But I think with time, you might like the idea. Now that we are connected, we can bring the cloud to us using local stack running in our Kubernetes deployment, allowing us to experiment with cloud deployments and sharpening our knowledge of cloud behavior. Local stack can be deployed using a Helm chart, which then exposes the AWS services as endpoints for you to interact with through Trafic. Unfortunately, it's only AWS, but hopefully an Azure and GCP emulator will come out in the future. Let us talk about Harbor, which can be deployed as our private container registry to test the concepts of building, pushing, and pulling containers, giving us a safe space to play in since Harbor supports built-in container scanning and policies as depicted in my slide. What are we doing here? We are saving the best for last. Now that we have our playground in place, we can deploy what I like to call the aeroplane black box, Ortelius, and test drive integrations into anything our creativity can come up with, such as CI/CD pipelines, or cloud intelligence, or containers stored in Harbor. Ortelius can track and version your socks if you needed to. I'm sure you're thinking of things right now. I always find lonely single socks, and I wish I had Ortelius to track them. And whilst we're at the end, let's not forget we can next level our deployment with Argo CD, Flux, Kepton, and observability tools like Instano, vCluster, Cosmotron, and Dapper, just to mention a few. Goodbye, friends, and enjoy your weekend. And thank you for listening. Adios.